We know that great readers underline or take notes, just like President Obama, to help them remember important information in nonfiction texts. And today, we get to read chapter 5 of our reader, which we know is nonfiction. We're going to read this together while we write down that important information to help ourselves better remember and better understand our text. I'm going to take notes up here, but you're going to need a pencil and paper to take notes as well. So go get it. We're going to have a quiz, and your notes are going to come super in handy for that quiz. After each page, we're going to stop and ask ourselves, what important information did I just learn? Then we're going to take notes and write that important information down to help us remember it. Got your pencil and paper? Let's start reading. Chapter 5, The Attack on Washington, D.C. In August of 1814, President Madison was upset. 2 years had passed. The war was still going on. The U.S. Army had won some battles, and it had lost some battles. The British had landed an army near Washington, D.C. Ooh, let's pause. Do you know what Washington, D.C. is? Yes, it's a city, and it actually happens to be our capital. So it's not a state, it's just a city, but it has lots of important government buildings. Let's keep reading. Track British. British soldiers were marching. Madison hoped that the U.S. Army would be able to stop them. At the time, Washington, D.C. was a young town. Some buildings had just been finished, such as the Capitol. Others were not finished yet. Still, it was an important place. It was where the U.S. Congress met to make laws. It was where the Supreme Court met. We see a photograph and a caption over here. Let's see if we can read that caption and see what important information this text feature is telling us. The Capitol building in Washington, D.C., as it looked in 1810. Oh, so we see the Capitol there. So that tells us this is an important building. We just got to the end of a page. So let's ask ourselves, what important information did we just learn? At the beginning, this talks about how President Madison was feeling. Why was President Madison feeling upset? Yes, President Madison was upset because 2 years had passed and the war was still going on. The British Army was marching towards Washington, D.C. And we know this is an important city with those new buildings. Let's keep reading. Track the words as I read. The president's house was a special house that had been constructed just for the president. Today, it is called the White House. It was only about 10 years old at the time. It was home to President Madison and his wife, Dolly. President Madison was aware that there was going to be a big battle outside the city. He planned to go support the troops. He ordered some soldiers to protect Mrs. Madison and the president's house. Then he jumped on his horse and took off. The battle outside the city did not go well. The U.S. Army was beaten. People quickly found out about the defeat. We know that word defeat means that they lost. The army had lost. The British were coming. People in the city panicked. They grabbed their things and ran away. The roads were jammed with people and carts. Here we see another photograph and caption. Let's read the caption together. Say it with me. The president's house was the home of the U.S. president. Nice, and we see a picture of it right there. So, what important information did we just learn? What was President Madison planning to do on this page? Yes, we see here that President Madison had planned to go support the troops in the big battle outside of the city. Make sure you write that important information down. All right, track president. President Madison could not get back to the president's house. His wife, Dolly, was left there with the servants and the soldiers. The soldiers ran away. Mrs. Madison could not stay in the president's house. The British would be there soon. She had to flee or run away. Mrs. Madison hoped to take as much with her as she could. But which things should she take? There were so many fine things in the president's house. She loved a lamp that hung in one room, but there was no way she could take that. It was too heavy. She had a big closet of fancy dresses. She loved them too. But there were more important things for her to carry away. Over here we see this picture. Let's read the caption together. Say it with me. Dolly Madison. Nice. What did Mrs. Madison have to do here and why? Yes, we see here that she had to flee because the British would be there soon. She hoped that she could take as much with her as she could. Write that important information down. Are you ready to flip the page? Track the words. In the end, Mrs. Madison left most of her own things behind. Instead, she carried away things that were important to the American people. Ooh, I'm curious what Mrs. Madison carried away. Let's keep reading. Track she. She grabbed papers and letters. She stuffed as many of them as she could into a trunk. Mrs. Madison was ready to leave. Then she remembered one last thing. It was a painting of George Washington. She did not want the painting to fall into the hands of the British. She called one of the president's trusted servants, Paul Jennings, for help. There was no time to take the painting gently from its frame. Jennings and the other servants broke the frame so they could quickly remove the canvas painting. They carefully rolled the canvas like a tube and carried it away. "It is done," said Dolly Madison. Then she ran out the door to safety. Let's read the caption together. Dolly Madison helped to save a painting of George Washington. Nice reading. Now, we just got to the end of the page. What was Mrs. Madison able to take with her? Yeah, she grabbed things that were important to the American people, like papers and letters, and even that painting of George Washington. Make sure you write that important information down as we finish our notes on Chapter 5. Wow, kiss your brain. We just read a whole another chapter and took notes together. But now it's your turn to use those notes and take the quiz on what you just learned. Remember, in your quiz, to read every question twice. How many times? Yeah, twice. Then go back to those notes for your evidence. If you can't find the evidence in your notes, go back to this video, look back to the text. Last, select that answer that matches your notes. Go get them, second grade. You got this.